We are already joined by our next speakers. I will start with Craig Turp, who is our editor at Emerging Europe. He is going to moderate the next session. He has two guests, one online, and there's going to be one more guest joining here. David, can I ask you to join and take a seat? And there was a microphone, but I'm going to give you mine in a second. This session will look at different examples of what has happened in the sustainability area so far, and also considering the fact that we need to act fast to improve the situation as far as our environment is concerned. So that's what the session is going to focus on. Craig, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you're currently located, where you're...
Hang on a second, because we can't hear you properly yet.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Now it's better.
All right, let's try again. You can hear me well? Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Lee's just given me a nod. Well, let me start again. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. Thanks for joining me for this particular discussion and how the region's startups can take some of the challenges that climate change has presented and turn them into business opportunities. As Andrew said, my name is Craig Turp. I'm the editor of Emerging Europe, and I'm personally a champion, I like to think, of the many innovative solutions to mitigating climate change that the region has produced and is continuing to produce, and hopefully will do so moving on into the future. I think that it's clear that this year has been a pivotal year when it comes to climate change. There have been so many extreme weather events that I think it's been something of a wake-up call for many, many people, including some of the the naysayers who previously hadn't necessarily believed that climate change was real. I think, unfortunately, however, the much heralded, the much hyped up COP26 was something of a disappointment. I think that once again we were slightly let down by our governments. So trying to make this as positive as possible and trying to look forward a little bit. If our governments have let us down, once again, it's going to be up to the private sector, as it has on so many occasions in the past, not just about climate change, but on so many issues, to ride into the rescue, as it were. We have entrepreneurs are problem solvers, and our region, that we call Emerging Europe, is lucky in that it has so many fabulous innovative entrepreneurs who are as well placed as anyone really to solve the many, many problems that the climate change has created. Most importantly, solve the past. We are against time here, and I think that the way to do that is to see these challenges as business opportunities to create thriving businesses. So without any further ado, let me introduce my fantastic panel here. We have Lee Zhu, who is the managing partner at LXI Capital. She's joining us online. Also joining us online is Daria Kichuk, who's the CEO and co-founder of Effa, a Ukrainian startup that develops a variety of green products. And in the studio, as Andrew mentioned there, we have David Gilger, who's the founding partner of Blue Lake, an accelerator and venture capital firm which scouts, invests, and supports in undiscovered startups from emerging markets. So thank you, all of you, for taking the time to join us today. Daria, I'm going to start the discussion with you because you're in the chair, as it were. You are running a startup which has already developed a number of solutions. So I think it would be good to kick off with some insight from you on what those solutions are and why you focused on these particular things.
Hello everyone, and hello Craig, and thank you for inviting me for this event. And I will try my best to bring something good for people here, inspiring or maybe something learning. I'm sorry, I'm
Inspiration is
fresh.
what we want. That's what we're
Yeah,
after more than
inspirational.
anything. Inspiration.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm fresh from the dentist, so don't pay attention if I will look weird, but I will try my best. So yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Effa. Now we are solving the problem of the global plastic pollution by creating eco-friendly, recyclable, and renewable disposable products. Our biggest goal is to replace all of the plastic disposables because the COVID crisis unfortunately showed us that the world is impossible without disposables. So our goal here is to replace them and make this world a little bit better and to save people from that. Our first product is a paper toothbrush, the one that I'm holding in my hand. This is fully recyclable and renewable. Also, we have a paper razor. I don't have it right now with me, but we have already developed and presented the first paper razor. And we're developing the whole line of other eco-friendly disposables in order to help people to in this fight with global plastic pollution in their everyday life, to make it easier. And like, you can find our products in every shop you go, and you can save our planet in a very easy steps.
So I'm just going to stay with you for a bit. I mean, is it fair to say that you identified a specific challenge and then came up with something to overcome that challenge? I mean, is that how you approached it?
Yeah, that was a simple identification of the problem when our founder Ilya, when he was traveling and he saw the plastic toothbrush in a hotel, and you used it for 3 minutes and just throw it away afterwards. It just doesn't make any sense. That is why we have decided to make the paper toothbrush at first, because everybody eats, sleeps, and brushes their teeth, hopefully every day. That is why we have decided to make it from paper. And then when we've been working on this product, we've been working on this project, on the startup since 2018, and we have developed the whole line and the whole idea, which is more than just a toothbrush. So we want to not just to develop the whole line of disposables, but to bring this philosophy of sustainable living to every person's everyday life.
All right, thank you. I'm going to come to you, Lee, now. And I'd appreciate your thoughts on, much the same question. I mean, is the approach that startups should take find a problem and then try and solve it, as opposed to, what we do sometimes see going on, startups will create something and then try and find a problem to solve.
This is for me, sorry.
Sorry. It was for Lee, but you're more than welcome to come back in a minute, Daria. Sorry, over to you, Lee.
Okay, thanks, Greg. First, thank you very much for having me here. My name is Li Xu. I'm the managing partner for LXI Capital. Just a little bit background. I'm a Chinese American currently living and working from Europe. So that gives you a little bit of insight what I'm going to say. So to answer your question, are the startup to start out their ideas from the problems? I will say, based on the company we worked with in the past, we see both sides. Some started with problems, trying to find solutions. Some started with some ideas, think they are going to find a market eventually. The company start with problems. I think that that's the initial idea stage when they have a problem want to solve. But then at the end of the day, no matter what they do, eventually we have to commercialize in the real life market. So the initial problem adjust over the time along during the phase of a capital raise, and also during the phase of the this testing market. So the day one, the problem they find might be totally different by the time they actually reach the market. So that's what I'm gonna say. Thanks.
All right, David Gilger, I'm going to come over to you there in the studio now. I mean, from the VC side of things, I mean, how do you see it? Do you think that there is enough awareness amongst the tech community, people who are creating all of these innovations, that that there are real opportunities here, that tech for net zero is actually an opportunity?
Hi, I'm David. I'm a partner of LXI of Partners of our audience today. And we invest in early stage communities. And over the past 6 months, we had this very interesting insight whereby our team is focused specifically on eco-alternative energy, what's called green startups in the UK and Europe. And I don't have a single answer to this question, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, I don't think there is a single answer. So,
yeah. So let's remember, some of the greatest innovations, they were horrible, like lead and petrol. That was a great innovation. That was the startup of those days. Fracking, that's a pretty great innovation from a technical point of view. The problem from the VC side of things is how do we measure what is success? Because quite frankly, once we drop all the terms, all the great aspirations too frequently, it comes down to money, it comes down to returns, and in the ideal world, we would have startups that are doing the right thing, they're pursuing the right goals that are right for the planet, for humanity, for the health, for the global health. In the long term, they'll coincide with the commercial returns and the free market that we think. But the reality, it's not the case. So I think the government has a kind of a critical role to play to encourage in many ways to create the market that incentivize both the VC side of things and the startups to pursue the goals that otherwise may not commercially be viable. This opens up a whole different can of worms, and this is what we're seeing in the UK. Pretty much every single startup we met, they had some sort of government grant behind them, and not, regretful to say, not that many of them had the substance. So there is obviously a fine-tuned balance that needs to be found. And I think the good news is that we are talking about it. It's a real issue, and hopefully it will lead us to this brighter future where VCs investing in the startup that is trying to save the world, for a better term, and benefit both and commercially. But let's not make a mistake. We are at the very start. It's too close.
All right. Thank you. I mean, Dash, I'm going to come back to you. I mean, a startup, how do you take something, that starts local, that starts small? I mean, how do you then take that global, something that's going to make a real difference? What do you see as being the key things that are needed? Does it begin with an idea that the startup has to think big from the outset? I mean, is that the key to it?
Yeah, thank you for this wonderful question. As I think it's really important for every startup to understand that the previous speakers, I totally agree with them, and is that the main point for a startup is fast growth, sales, and if you are making eco-friendly startup, if you are making something in sustainability, you will actually change something in climate change or in different things in like plastic fights and whatsoever. If your product will be sold globally, only that way you will solve something and you will bring an impact. So that is how, our goals from very beginning of Effa, when we just started, our goals was to sell to big companies, to partner with huge companies, to make a global approach for that, not to be a local, tiny startup that will solve a tiny problem for example, in Kiev in Ukraine. That is why we have started from partnership with Netflix, with Marriott Hotels, with Radisson Hotels. Here in Ukraine, we're also working with companies who are working globally, helping us with distribution chain, with manufacturing, with sales and whatsoever. It is there's a problem with startups. They love their idea so much that they don't want to share it with anyone. And they're afraid that everybody will steal their idea and the horrible thing will happen. that doesn't happen a lot. And I think that startups have to partner, have to come out and talk with big companies, because they can help us, they can help startups to grow faster and to make a global impact, not to be just not to be an institutional project of like some research or something like this. At like in the end of the day, you have to make business out of it. You have to make money out of it in order to get investments, in order to grow and like to be a normal corporation and a business. That's how you can do that.
All right, thank you. I mean, Lee, I saw you, smiling and nodding there. You're clearly in agreement. I mean, have you got something to share on this?
Well, I mean, I should not say agree or not agree. I'm just happy to hear she said what she said. Companies trying to start with a local, because on my side, what I often see is a startup wants to be global since day one, before they even have anything to show the world. And I always tell them, focus on your local market first, and build some track record, some foundation. With that, then you go to the regional or global market, because from outside we want to see, okay, yes, great idea, but have you done anything like that before? Does it work? Right? Before we invest in a region, we have no idea yet. So the key is, I always tell other people, and then myself is also starting my business from scratch. My suggestion is always try your best to build a track record in the local market first, and then use that as your base and foundation. Try other markets, and then when you go to other markets, a couple of things you have to consider. One is cultural difference. So from emerging Europe, probably it's easier to go to say Western Europe or UK side, and then there might be huge demand from Asian market with the population growth both China and India, and also super wealth from the Middle East. However, the country is work with it, even the market potentials are huge. And then she mentioned the stock market concern about other companies to copy. So because we're dealing with IP issue all the time, and of course we do need IP for certain things. But my personal belief is you have to invent and grow fast to the point. Don't worry about IP issue, because people will copy you. I'm not too concerned about the large companies, like conglomerate companies. Typically, they acquire once you reach into certain stages. Invent from very beginning idea is not their strategy. However, you might need to be concerned with other startup who can copy you faster, who already have a team and market access, and they just they either buy you out or copy you much faster. So that's something you might need to consider. Yeah.
All right. All right, thanks. David in the studio there, I'm going to come back to you. This perspective of, local against global, I mean, is it the case that, some climate tech startups are too localized, however, given what we've just heard? I mean, is there a danger of that they're even, not necessarily too localized, but perhaps too specialized, to offer a meaningful solution? What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a very real danger of that. And I guess it would depend also on your local market. So if your local market is China, US, India, then you're in a very strong place with a huge market, and indeed you can make a genuine worldwide impact because these countries, amongst others, some of the most significant CO2 emitters. However, if, let's say, with the example of Russia and Ukraine, it's too easy to become very specialized, really good startup operators. Tons of Ukrainian startups. Your starting point is becoming the point where you start for years and years, and you become better and better at solving global issues. And it's not only about Ukraine. I travel throughout the UK, and we see many startups, especially those that are encouraged by government grants, especially local government grants. They become real great specialists at solving not even the UK problem, but a regional problem in the UK and years go by and they never move on to that global level. Well, I think it comes down to what is your starting point and the discipline. There's nothing wrong with starting with a small market and building that experience and that traction. But as a founder, I think it's advisable to be really aware of the dangers of being sucked into your comfort zone, being able then to move on to larger markets and then indeed becoming a global position.
All right. Well, I mean, one of the challenges the startups face when they do want to come out of the comfort zone is, if you like, is finding money. It's finding funds. It's finding finance. It's finding the money to grow. So let's look at that a little bit. Daria, I'm going to ask you. Maybe tell us a bit about Effa's funding journey. How was it for you guys?
That was a roller coaster for us. That was, as for any other startup, I think. So Effa has raised both governmental money and angel investment, not VC, but angel investment. Last year, we have closed the financial round of $500,000 from the angel investor, and we have raised a smaller amount of $50,000 from Ukrainian government. Sorry.
I know, I'm not sure where that space is coming from. I don't know if anybody can hear it, but we're getting a space noise every 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, and it's really, I think it's really important for startup, especially in the sustainability area, to understand that you need a really smart money to rise your to grow your company, because it's a really sensitive and pretty hot area to work on, especially for us, we're having a hardware or consumer product, not a software. Most of the VC funds are mostly oriented on software companies because they are showing the faster growth. They're developing much more faster than hardware companies. That is why it's pretty challenging to find the smart money that can actually help you. As I always say, and for us, for our team, and for other startups, that money for a startup is not the point of existence. It's a tool for faster development, and everybody has to understand that startup can develop without investment money, but it will be slower than with the investor. And you always have to understand it, and that's startup's approach for looking for money and for talking with investors, because you have to getting money from VC fund or angel investors, like getting married, and you have to be really careful when choosing the right investor, when talking with the right people, and about the governmental money as well. It's a really good tool for a very early stage startups to get the first funds, not to get any equity for this. Major grants are given equity free. But these grants are also really focused, as David said, they are really focused on, most of them are really focused on the regional development, on the development in your country, in your region, in your area. And startup has to think global. So that's also the thing that you have to understand with the team and with your strategy of development of a startup. What do you need? Global exposure and fast growth. Then you have to look for the VCs. If you want to stay regional and solve the problem in your city or country, then you have to look for grants or governmental tools for the development.
Lee, I'm going to ask you, from the other side of you, Daria said that, startups have to find the right investor. I mean, how do investors find the right startup?
Well, I think it's almost like getting married. In a way, it's the same process. You have to go to meet as many people as you first have to do homework. I used to do a lot of in-person networking before COVID, but then COVID forced me to do a lot of research at home. So it doesn't matter which side you are at. Sorry, some background noise from the office here. So it doesn't matter which side you're on, the startup side need the money, or the fund side need a startup. It's always a lot of research. So know the market, know the audience, and then know what you want first, because all the money has certain criteria, what company they can invest, who they want to work with, and the startup same way. They know what each money is different. So government money has its own agenda, and then it doesn't matter regional or local. And also the VC has its own mandates as well. Some take majority, some only take minority. Some sit on the board, have a seat, and then strategic definitely wants your licensing. That's just and also distribution rights. So each capital has its own you can say character or nature. So you have to understand what investor what type of investor, what they're looking for. And as a startup, all I can say is almost like you optimize the capital in the market globally, and you have to design what kind of capital for each stage of your business operation and growth. And then, kind of just know what you want and then look for it, and then just talk as many people as you want. And normally what I always do is first come, first serve, because from capital side is, I'm interested, I love your idea, I love your company, love the team, but then they never cut check, right? So that happens all the time. And then that drain you. I mean, the only thing you have right now is time and energy. And it's the only thing you cannot afford is to lose your time and energy. So you have to be very clear what you want, and then also very good with negotiation. And also the other thing I want to say is many funds, there's a huge difference between the funds with fund sitting in the bank account versus the company was committed but not funded. So oftentimes when you're dealing with international investors, say, oh yeah, we love you a project, we want to invest at this, give you very glory promise number, but they just cannot deploy capital, because what they need to do, they either need to go back to their LP to raise money, or the money probably in a country with capital restrictions to leave the country. So you have to be aware what kind of capital available on the market, and then know what to look for, and then go from there.
All right, thanks, David. I'm just going to come back to you now for the final point. From the VC's perspective, a question really. I mean, are traditional VCs equipped to invest and support in this new crop of startups who are tackling specific problems tied to climate change?
Thanks a lot. And that's a really interesting question. One of the things that I come across, and I'm actually a subscriber to this idea as well, is that as an investor, as a VC, we should stop splitting social development goals from the returns. And in an ideal scenario, this should be a package where you're not looking at startups. Usually when you look at startup debt, you have, here is a slide on the return, and this is the slide on the social impact you have goals that you respond to it. And there is no reason why these two factors should be separated, but they are. And one of the reasons is that the VC community, in my opinion, and I come at it from an early stage, we don't have language yet to describe what kind of goals do we want when it comes to financial gains and social ones. So in that way, I don't think VCs are particularly well equipped to evaluate the startup whose impact may be 2 tenths financial and 8 tenths social, which will result in great local eco-development that may come in 6, 7, 8, 10 years down the line. I think that there is a great shift, there is a change. The change at the moment is driven mainly from later stage, larger funds. That's in great development, even in pension funds in Australia. On that side of things, where social side, the eco side is becoming mainstream. This has to trickle down to the smaller VCs, to the earlier investors, such as ourselves. But at the moment, this is a subject which is of intense debate for ourselves in the wake, and I know it's a subject that is of intense debate in a good sense and of intense interest to our peers. Because quite frankly, at the moment, no, we are not that well equipped to evaluate, judge, assess a startup that offers a genuine mix of financial returns and social and eco-green social development goals returns in much longer term. But this is something that is on the top of our priority, on top of our this. And I find it actually quite exciting. It's almost like learning a new language.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Dasha. We have to leave it there, unfortunately. We have our next panel lined up. I'm going to hand back to Andrew now in London. So thank you for joining us, everyone, and look forward to seeing you again.